The casket hadn't even cooled before he slid the ring on her finger. Rain hit the church roof like gunfire. The mourners hadn't left their pews. And there he was, Michael. Grinning like a wolf in silk. Emily's eyes were red. Her heart was shattered. Her judgment? Gone. She said yes. That was the first mistake. The second was trusting him. Because Michael didn't marry her to heal her grief. He married her for what was buried with her father. And what Emily didn't know was that her father left behind more than a will. He left behind a man. A man who wasn't done protecting her. The first time Michael laid eyes on Emily Montgomery, she was standing next to her father's grave. Hair soaked. Lips trembling. A porcelain statue about to crack. Michael knew grief. He'd made a living off it. He'd met wealthy widows in wine bars, divorcees in estate sales, lonely hearts with too much house and not enough love. And now, here she was, the heiress to Montgomery Industries, her empire trembling under her heels. George Montgomery, her father, had died in a car crash 3 weeks prior. Brake failure. Fast. Clean. No scandal. Just tragedy. The board mourned him. The stockholders whispered. Emily, fresh out of Columbia Business School, was suddenly at the helm of $100 million legacy. Michael moved fast. He introduced himself at a charity gala hosted in George's memory. Told her he admired her father's work. Told her she looked just like him. Told her she was strong, that grief made her glow. And when she cried in the back garden by the roses, he was there with a handkerchief and a glass of something warm. Emily fell, not in love, but into need. She needed someone to say she was okay. That she could do this. That her father hadn't left her alone. Michael was everything her pain craved. They married after 5 months. Quiet ceremony. No press. But one man wasn't smiling. Richard Blake stood in the back pew, arms folded, face carved from granite. He'd served beside George for 30 years. Knew every inch of the business. Knew every kind of man. And he knew Michael. After the reception, Richard pulled Emily aside. "You trust him?" he asked. Emily blinked. "I love him." "That's not what I asked." Richard insisted on a prenuptial agreement. Not as advice, as a condition. Emily inherited 60% of the company, but George's will had given Richard veto power over any change in control. And that meant he had leverage. Real leverage. Michael resisted at first. Then smiled. "I'm not marrying her for the money," he said. Everyone lies when they say that. The prenup was brutal. If Emily died without a will, Michael would get nothing. No shares. No control. Only a modest allowance. The board backed Richard. The lawyers signed. Michael kissed Emily's hand and called himself a romantic. But his eyes didn't smile. He moved into the Montgomery estate within the week. Big house. Dozens of rooms. A pool he never swam in. A library he never touched. Emily, meanwhile, tried to be a wife. She cooked. She gardened. She tried to forget that the man beside her never once mentioned her father. Never once asked about her dreams. Just how many zeros were in the company's offshore account. She brought up children one evening. Michael poured more wine. "I want a family," she said. "We have a family," he said, swirling his glass. "No," she said. "I want our family." He didn't look up. Emily didn't know it then, but Michael was already sleeping with someone else. A cocktail waitress from a downtown club named Sharon, all legs and laughter and no past to get in the way. By month 7, the late-night calls began. By month 9, the empty bed. Still, Emily tried. Richard kept close, watching like a hawk. He visited once a week, under the excuse of company business. He'd ask Emily questions no one else did, about her health, her sleep, her dreams. She told him she was tired. Just tired. He knew that word. Tired was the first lie every battered heart told itself. Then came the doctor's call. Emily had been trying to get pregnant for over a year. But now, the tests came back with news that would break most people. Cancer. Aggressive. Ovarian. She told Michael in the sunroom. His reaction was measured. Too measured. That's terrible, he said. And then, how long will treatment take? And then, does this affect the prenup? Emily didn't cry. She just stared at the man she married, realizing she'd been sleeping beside a stranger. A grifter with no soul. But she didn't scream. She didn't leave. Instead, Emily smiled. And began to plan. She called an old friend, Colin Satterfield, a pediatrician from her college days. A quiet man. Loyal. Kind. She told him her idea. He said yes without hesitation. Next came the lawyer. A private office. A secret will. A plan that would leave Michael with nothing but dust and fury. She froze her eggs. Chose a surrogate. Told no one but Colin and Richard. Time was running out, but not fast enough for Michael to suspect. He'd already bought Sharon a diamond. Already looked at penthouses in Miami. And so, while her body weakened and her eyes dimmed, Emily spent her last months building a fortress of paper and love, one that would outlive her. Michael thought he'd married into heaven. He didn't know she was digging him a grave. Michael didn't sleep in her bed anymore. The cancer had done that. She'd lost weight. Her skin bruised easy. The hair came out in clumps. He said he couldn't watch it. But truth was, he didn't care. He was already calling Sharon, baby, behind her back. Already working on getting her a car. Emily saw it. Heard the whispers. Smelled the perfume. She'd been raised not to cause scenes. But this wasn't about saving the marriage anymore. It was about preparing for war. The diagnosis came on a cold Thursday in November. Stage 3. Maybe stage 4. The oncologist had said something about hope. But hope doesn't live in MRI scans. It lives in memory, and Emily didn't have time for either. Michael cried once. In front of Richard. Put on a hell of a show. She's the love of my life, he said. Richard nodded slowly. Then watched the man get into a red convertible with a woman half his age and twice his lipstick. I've seen wolves, Richard muttered. But this one's got perfume. Emily started chemo. Lost her strength. But gained clarity. She asked Colin to come visit. He brought flowers. Then brought silence. He'd always known how to sit with pain and not flinch. You remember what we talked about? She asked. He nodded. Everything's in motion. And it was. The surrogate was healthy. The embryo had taken. Life was growing, even as hers was slipping. Emily never told Michael. Not one word. Her will, rewritten and notarized, sat in a sealed envelope in the vault of Bradley and Scott, the law firm her father trusted. It named the child, Robert Satterfield, as sole heir. Richard and Colin were co-guardians. Michael would get nothing. Not even the house. But the man she'd married was blind to anything not wrapped in satin. Michael spent his days at the club, throwing cash like he earned it. Spent his nights with Sharon, whispering about futures he didn't deserve. Sometimes he came home, drunk, arrogant, laughing too loud in a house that was slowly turning into a mausoleum. Emily watched it all. She kept a journal. Not for revenge. For her son. Dear Robert, one entry began, your father was kind. He was quiet. He never lied. He didn't give me butterflies. He gave me peace. And peace, my love, is what men like Michael can never offer. Richard grew more worried by the day. If you don't write a will, he said one morning, he gets it all. Emily just smiled. Trust me. I already lit the fuse. Michael, meanwhile, got bolder. He started bringing Sharon to black tie events. Introduced her as a family friend. Emily would nod and excuse herself. She didn't need to fake the frailty. Her body did it for her. At home, he stopped pretending entirely. Ate in the den. Left dirty clothes everywhere. Sometimes, he'd turn up the music while she slept, said it was his therapy. He didn't hit her. Never raised a hand. He didn't have to. Neglect has a way of rotting the soul just as quick as violence. One night, when she couldn't sleep, Emily walked down to the basement. She opened a locked cabinet behind the furnace. Inside were the documents, birth plans, surrogate contracts, Colin's declaration of paternity, and the sealed will. She placed a photo of her father on top. You always said I was soft, she whispered. But look, Daddy. I didn't break. The chemo stopped working in March. She declined rapidly after that. Hospice came. The nurse was gentle. The days blurred. But still, Emily asked every morning, how's the surrogate? Is the baby healthy? Yes, Colin would say. He's strong. On her last day, Emily asked for sunlight. They rolled her chair to the window. Michael wasn't there. He was in Aspen, clearing his head. Colin brought her a new photo, a blurry ultrasound. He's got your chin, he said. Emily smiled. Then, she closed her eyes. And never opened them again. The obituary ran short and simple, Emily Montgomery, daughter, wife, visionary. The press called Michael the grieving husband. He wore black and didn't flinch when the cameras flashed. Sharon stood beside him in a black dress that hugged every curve. Richard didn't attend the burial. He was too busy preparing what came next. Because Michael, poor, arrogant, beautiful Michael, had no idea that the woman he thought he'd bled dry had died with her hands on the wheel. And the road ahead was about to turn. Sharp. The air inside Bradley and Scott attorneys at law was dry as bone. Chicago was cold that April morning. Clouds low and gray. The kind of sky that made you pull your coat tighter, even inside your soul. Michael strolled into the conference room like it was his coronation. He wore a tailored suit and a smirk. Sharon floated beside him in heels taller than her past. Her perfume filled the space before her name did. They laughed, out loud, in front of Emily's mother. The silence that followed was so thick, you could have carved it. The lawyer, Mr. Scott, cleared his throat. Old man. Wire-frame glasses. Voice like gravel. Let's begin. Richard sat near the door. Unmoving. Eyes like icebergs. Colin arrived just after, holding a small blue envelope. Inside it, a birth certificate. A name. Michael leaned back in his chair. Legs crossed. Hands folded. He thought this was a formality. Thought he was about to cash out. The will was short. Clean. George Montgomery had taught his daughter to cut through fog with a knife. It opened with love. Then came the fire. I, Emily Montgomery, being of sound mind and body, leave all my assets, shares, estates, and holdings to my only child, Robert Satterfield. There was a pause. A hole in the air. Michael blinked. What? The lawyer didn't look up. To Robert Satterfield, son of Colin Satterfield and myself, born via gestational surrogate on March 9th. What the hell are you talking about? Michael snapped, rising from his chair. Richard stood now, too. Calm. Dead calm. She planned this, he said. Down to the hour. Michael's voice cracked, just once. She couldn't have, there was no. Colin stepped forward. Placed the envelope on the table. The birth certificate slid out, like a guillotine dropping in slow motion. The name was real. The dates matched. The lawyer nodded. She froze her eggs the month after your wedding, Richard said. Started the paperwork while you were in Vegas. Remember that? Michael's mouth opened, but nothing came. The will went on. In the event of my death, full guardianship of my son, Robert, is to be granted to Mr. Colin Satterfield and Mr. Richard Blake. They are to raise him jointly, within the house located at 17, East Wilmot Lane, until he reaches legal age. The house. Emily's house. Michael gripped the table like he might flip it. This is bull's asterisk asterisk asterisk. That house is mine. No, said the lawyer, flat as stone. It was never yours. A long silence. Sharon touched Michael's shoulder. Maybe we should. He shrugged her off. The lawyer looked around. Mr. Montgomery was not named in the will. Not in any capacity. The prenuptial agreement disqualifies him from any posthumous claim. As for all business assets and financial holdings, they are being transferred into a trust in Robert's name. Colin remained silent. He wasn't a man who needed many words. Emily had chosen him for that. For strength without noise. He stood there, holding the weight of legacy like a man used to lifting more than his share. Michael's hand slammed the table. This is fraud. It's theft. She can't. She did, Richard said. And you helped her. By being exactly who you are. Sharon tried to leave. Michael grabbed her wrist. You knew about this? What? No, how would I, Michael, let go? He released her with a snap. Sat down. Pale now. Cold sweat blooming at the collar. He looked around the room. No allies. Just the sound of a clock ticking on the far wall, like a slow drum at a hanging. And that's when it hit him. He'd lost everything. Not just the money. Not just the house. But the game. Emily had played him. Even in death, she was smarter. Sharper. Stronger. The funeral had been her final mask. This will, was the real eulogy. Outside, the wind picked up. The sky cracked. In the car, Sharon didn't speak. Michael stared straight ahead, jaw clenched. Every mile away from that office, he sank deeper into something he couldn't name. Humiliation. Rage. But beneath it all, something colder. Something older. Revenge. The kind that doesn't shout. The kind that whispers, if I can't have it, no one can. Michael stopped shaving. Stopped smiling. Stopped pretending. The house he rented in Cicero had no pictures on the wall. Just silence. Sharon was gone, walked out 2 days after the will reading. Said he scared her now. He didn't argue. He sat alone. Days blurred. He replayed the will in his head like a broken record. Over and over. That name. Robert. A baby. Born in secret. Raised in his house. His pool. His kitchen. His money. Sleeping in the room that should have been his son's. Only, it wasn't. Because Emily had outplayed him. Even in the grave. And now the world had moved on without him. Colin and Richard were parading the child around like a prince. There were articles. Photos. Heir to the Montgomery legacy, baby Robert. Michael watched it all from his cracked phone. Eyes bloodshot. Whiskey for breakfast. Vengeance for dinner. And then the idea came. Not money. Not lawyers. Pain. He would take the boy. Not to ransom him. Not to raise him. To erase him. To tear Emily's final gift to pieces and leave it on the steps of an orphanage like trash. Let them wonder what kind of monster could abandon a child like that. Let them remember him. Let her remember, even in death. He started planning. First, the sitter. A young woman named Claire. College student. Watched Robert on weekdays while Colin worked and Richard handled company affairs. Lived in a rental house in Milton, Illinois. Quiet. Suburban. Trees everywhere. Michael followed her for 6 days. Took photos. Timed exits. Studied patterns. She always took Robert to the park on Thursdays. Walked home at 5:30. Alone. He bought gloves. Zip ties. A second-hand van with no plates. He shaved his head. No longer Michael, the charming husband. Now just a shadow in the woods. He left his phone in a locker at the Greyhound station. No signal. No trail. It was Thursday. He waited in the trees. Dusk. Wind brushing the leaves like whispers. The park emptied out. Laughter faded. The sun began to bow behind the trees. Claire walked past with Robert in a stroller. Michael stepped onto the path behind her, slow, silent. He reached into his coat. Stopped 10 feet behind her. Then. Hey! The voice came from the side. A man stepped out of the trees. Tall. Broad. Weathered. A shotgun slung on his back. Not raised. Just there. Evening, the man said, calm as rain. Lost? Michael froze. Claire turned. Ray. What are you doing here? The man, Ray Myers, nodded. Checking the trail cameras. Some coyotes been sniffing around. You alright, miss? Michael tried to speak. His voice didn't come. Ray stepped closer. Looked Michael up and down. Pretty warm for gloves, huh? Michael turned. Started to walk. Ray followed. Mind stopping a second? Michael walked faster. Ray picked up his pace. Hey, partner. Stop. And then Michael ran. Down the hill. Through the trees. Fast. Clumsy. Branches whipped his face. Ray didn't shout. Didn't call for help. He chased. 5 minutes later, they hit the clearing. Michael stumbled. Slid on the mud. And Ray was there. Fast as judgment. Dropped him to the ground with one hit. Tied his wrists with his own zip ties. Pulled a badge from his coat pocket. Forest Service. Badge number 3087. You just picked the wrong park, son. Police arrived 20 minutes later. Claire trembling. Holding Robert. Ray stood off to the side, watching the blue lights flicker through the trees. He didn't say much. Just shrugged. Figured he wasn't here for the foliage. Michael was cuffed. Eyes wild. Mouth muttering. The van. Full of rope. A blanket. A pacifier. Enough to lock him away for decades. Colin arrived just before midnight. Held Robert close. Called Richard. They stood in the parking lot under the moonlight, silent. Shaken. Emily had tried to protect her son with lawyers. But fate? Fate had sent him a man in the woods. Ray Myers refused a reward. Said he didn't do anything special. Just didn't like the way the guy looked. But Richard knew better. And before they parted, he said something Ray would remember for the rest of his life. Emily sends her thanks. They gave him 27 years. Michael didn't cry. Didn't plead. Just stared at the floor while the judge read the sentence. The courtroom was full, reporters, family, even a few stockholders who remembered the old days when Emily Montgomery ran things with grace. Sharon wasn't there. She'd vanished into the kind of silence that people like her know how to disappear into. Colin sat in the gallery, hands folded. Richard beside him, suit pressed, face hard as always. But when the gavel hit, when the bailiff led Michael away in shackles, Richard closed his eyes. A breath. Long overdue. The house on East Wilmot Lane stayed quiet after that. Robert's room had blue curtains and books with dragons and stars. Colin made breakfast every morning. Richard came by every Sunday with donuts and business advice that no 3-year-old could understand. But he gave it anyway. Buy low, sell high, he'd whisper, as Robert sucked on a crayon. Sometimes, they'd visit Emily's grave. Colin never spoke there. Just sat. Let the boy play near the flowers while he stared at the headstone. You won, he'd think. He's safe. Ray Myers didn't fade into the background either. Turned out, he'd lived alone for 15 years. Widower. Spent more time in the woods than in town. After the trial, Richard invited him for dinner. One dinner turned into 2. Then into a tradition. Ray had never been a man for city life, but the Montgomery kitchen, with its warm lighting and children's drawings taped to the fridge, started to feel like the only place that made sense anymore. And then came Sarah. She showed up at kindergarten one Monday morning, dropping off her daughter, Lily. Small, serious-eyed. A mirror image of Robert's curiosity. Colin noticed her first. She smiled like someone who had lost something and found peace in the losing. Turned out she'd been divorced 2 years. Husband gone. Left her with debt and a daughter who didn't know what the word dad meant. Robert and Lily became friends fast. Built sandcastles together. Fought over toy dinosaurs. Cried, made up, and laughed again like the world was new every day. Sarah and Colin talked. Then walked. Then stayed up late on the porch, coffee in hand, talking about things they never got to say to the people they lost. One night, Richard looked out the window and smiled. Then whispered to no one, "Well, Emily, maybe it's starting." Robert turned 6. He called Richard, Pop. Called Ray, Big Ray. Called Sarah, Miss Sarah, for a long time, until one day, he forgot that Mississippi. Called Colin, Dad. There was no grand moment. No ceremony. No fireworks. Just a boy, standing at the kitchen table, drawing a picture of his family. In the middle, Emily. Floating above the house, smiling. Like an angel with red hair. And below her, Colin, Sarah, Lily, Richard, Ray. And himself. Robert handed it to Colin. "Can you show this to Mommy in heaven?" Colin didn't answer. Just nodded. And held the paper like it was made of glass. That night, they had dinner together. All of them. Ray told a joke so bad it made Richard spit out his wine. Sarah laughed so hard she cried. Lily sang a song about squirrels. Robert fell asleep in Colin's lap. And the room, that big, quiet room Emily once died in, was full of the kind of warmth money can't buy and lawyers can't write into a will. It was family. Strange, broken, beautiful. Emily had planned for everything. The will. The trust. The child. The betrayal. But what she couldn't plan for, what no one could, was that the pieces she left behind would come together. And build something stronger than she ever had. A family born not from blood. But from love earned in fire. Write in the comments where you're from, let's see how far these stories can spread. And of course, subscribe so you don't miss new exciting stories. See you soon.